Welcome to Stoic Philosophy for Life. This is not just a place to listen to books, it's a space to feel them with your soul. Here, we illuminate your mind with timeless lessons. Awaken your inner strength, cultivate self-minded discipline, and guide your journey of personal growth. Every word is carefully chosen to reach what you're truly seeking: peace, clarity, and lasting transformation. If this feels like the place for you, hit subscribe and walk this path with us every single day. Now, put on your headphones, take a deep breath, and begin the journey of renewing your mind and your life. Ignoring these life lessons is the fastest way to have a miserable life. Have you ever looked around and wondered why some people seem to walk through life with quiet confidence while others, maybe even you, struggle to get through the day? Why some wake up grounded while others feel like they are constantly catching up to a life they never fully chose? The difference, I have come to learn, is not luck. It is not talent. It is not even timing. It is this: some people paid attention to the lessons, others didn't. I was one of the ones who didn't, not because I was reckless, not because I wanted to suffer, but because I thought I knew better. I thought I had time. I thought these lessons were optional. I thought pain was random. I thought peace would arrive on its own, eventually. But here is what no one tells you. Your life will hurt more than it has to if you keep ignoring the truth that keeps showing up. Misery does not begin with one bad choice. It begins when you ignore what that bad choice is trying to teach you. It begins when you numb instead of reflect, when you repeat instead of repair, when you move on without truly moving through. We are not miserable because life is hard. Life has always been hard. We are miserable because we refuse to learn. The Stoics knew this. Epictetus said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." And that is exactly what kept me stuck. I thought I had it figured out. I thought I was strong because I could hide my pain. I thought busyness meant growth. I thought silence meant healing, but I was wrong, and I paid the price. That is why I am here now, to walk you through the lessons I once ignored, the ones I brushed off, the ones I said I'll deal with later, the ones that, when left unattended, quietly sabotaged my relationships, my peace, and my purpose. And I am not here to offer you vague motivation. I am not here to sell you on optimism. I am here to speak plainly, honestly, about the truths that either set you free or slowly destroy you from the inside out, depending on what you do with them. Because these lessons, they are not just wise, they are necessary. Ignore them and you will wake up one day, surrounded by everything you thought you wanted, but feel absolutely empty inside. Ignore them, and you will keep attracting the same cycles, the same pain, the same drama, because you never stop to ask, what is life trying to teach me through this? Ignore them, and you will blame the world for a life you quietly allowed by refusing to take ownership. But here is the good news. You can start learning now. You can choose awareness. You can choose reflection. You can choose growth, not because it is easy, but because misery costs more. More time, more energy, more years you will never get back. So if you are still here listening, then you are ready. Ready to stop walking blindfolded through your own life. Ready to look back, not with guilt, but with curiosity. Ready to rewrite the script, not with fake positivity, but with honest reckoning. In this series, I will walk you through 12 hard-earned lessons, the kind most people learn too late, the kind I ignored until my life forced me to pay attention. Some will challenge you, some will sting, but all of them, if taken seriously, will wake something up in you, and that awakening, that is where freedom begins. The first life lesson I ignored, repeatedly, was the one that quietly held me back the most: responsibility. Not the surface-level kind, not bills or deadlines or duties. I handled those. I wore my competence like armor. But underneath, when it came to the real parts of life, the emotional, the internal, the patterns I kept repeating, I blamed everything but myself. I blamed timing, circumstances, other people. I blamed my childhood. I blamed the market. I blamed their betrayal, their distance, their silence, their lack of understanding. And every time I blamed, I felt temporarily better, safer, justified. But nothing changed, because that is the nature of blame. It creates the illusion of control, while quietly stealing your actual power. It keeps the pain external. It gives you an enemy. But what it never gives you is progress. And slowly, I realized, the longer you stay in blame, the longer you stay in the same place. It does not matter how smart you are, how skilled, how spiritual. If you keep waiting for someone else to fix what they broke, or worse, what you broke, you will live in circles. Same triggers, same fights, same goals you never reach, same regrets. The Stoics made this very clear. Epictetus said, "Seek not the good in external things, seek it in yourselves." Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." But I ignored that. I thought self-awareness was enough, that just knowing what went wrong would eventually make it go right. But awareness without responsibility is just observation. It is insight with no action, and insight alone does not build a life. Only ownership does. Here is how you know if you are still avoiding this lesson. You keep saying, "I know I need to," but nothing changes. You keep saying, "They did this to me," as if healing requires their apology. You keep waiting for the circumstances to improve before you do. But life does not work like that. You do not get a better outcome by blaming a bad hand. You get a better life by learning how to play the hand you were given, with honesty, with discipline, with full ownership of every card you choose next. Let me be direct. No one is coming to rescue you. The apology may never come. The understanding you crave may never arrive. The opportunity you hoped for may have passed. And still, you are responsible for who you now become. That realization broke me, and then it rebuilt me. Because once I accepted that everything in my life was my responsibility, I stopped waiting. I stopped depending on closure. I stopped making decisions based on how much sympathy I would get. I stopped leaking energy into complaints, and I started reclaiming the pieces of myself I had scattered in every place I had blamed. If you are still here listening, then I want to ask you something. What are you still blaming? Who are you still hoping will change so you can finally be okay? And more importantly, what has that waiting cost you? Because blame is seductive. It protects your ego. It gives you a villain. It makes you feel right. But it never makes you whole. It never builds. It never repairs. It only delays the discomfort of looking in the mirror and saying, "This one is on me." And I promise you, that moment, the one where you stop blaming, is not weakness. It is birth. That is where your real life begins. So here is what I want you to try. For the next 24 hours, every time something frustrates you, pause. Do not complain. Do not vent. Do not explain. Just ask, what part of this can I take full ownership of? Even if it is just your reaction, even if it is just your energy, even if it is just your time. And then act on that ownership, not tomorrow, now. Because the longer you delay responsibility, the longer you delay freedom. There is no breakthrough without ownership. You can keep blaming and stay stuck. Or you can take the wheel, right here, right now. It will be uncomfortable, but it will also be the beginning of everything. Have you ever woken up feeling the weight of your to-do list before your feet even touch the floor? That churning in your chest starts early. The text you forgot to reply to, the meeting you need to prepare for, the call you might miss. You feel like you are on a treadmill going faster than you can run, trying to stay ahead, trying to control everything. But somehow, you never catch up. That was me for years. I thought control was synonymous with security. If I color-coded my calendar, charted my goals, memorized my presentations, managed my emotions perfectly, if everything was under my control, then I believed nothing could touch me. I believed I could outsmart life itself. But that kind of control is a mirage. Life has a way of turning our carefully built structures upside down. So I ran faster, planning more, organizing more, filling my days more, because if I slowed down, I would feel the chaos I was trying so desperately to avoid. The anxiety, the fear, the sense of not enough. But running harder didn't make the noise quieter. If anything, it amplified it. Control became my addiction, and whenever I lost it, annoying traffic, an unplanned delay, a relationship that didn't go as planned, I spiraled. I became defensive. I became frustrated. I became brittle. And I blamed the world for breaking my plan and for reminding me how little power I really had. Until one day, I was right in the middle of a well-executed project when disaster struck. Not technical, not personal, but logistical, and everything fell apart. The polished presentation, the months of prep, the late nights, gone in a blink. And in that moment, what I dreaded most happened. I could not fix it. I could not control it. I had nowhere to go. For a moment, panic spiked through me, but then something strange happened. I let it be. I swallowed my pride. I stepped out of the illusion. I said, "Okay, you did your best. Now it is what it is." And they ended the call early. It should have felt like failure, but something in me exhaled. That day, I learned a truth that changed the rest of my life. True strength lies not in control, but in acceptance. Not in managing everything, but in steering what truly matters. Not in running life's marathon at top speed, but in learning to rest when the body tires and walk when the mind resists. Because here is the deeper truth. Trying to control everything is the easiest way to suffer the most. And the reason is simple. The moment you believe your well-being depends on external order, you will never be well. The Stoics saw this. They warned against the attachment to things we cannot control. Epictetus said, "Some things are up to us, and some are not." Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to meet whatever comes with composure. Those weren't abstract reminders. They were survival instructions. But let me be real. Accepting this doesn't mean giving up. It means discovering what is actually yours to carry and what isn't. Part of this lesson was learning to distinguish between circle of control, the parts of my life I truly influence, and circle of concern, everything else. The circle of concern used to rule me. Now I invite it into my awareness occasionally, but I don't live there. The peace is beyond that boundary. If you are listening to this section, perhaps you already feel the exhaustion of trying to manage everything. Maybe your sleep is restless. Maybe your energy feels like a string pulled too tight. Maybe your mind buzzes with reminders, deadlines, obligations you cannot escape. Reminders that you are persuaded to believe control equals security. But the irony is that control, relentless attempts to micromanage every moment, doesn't bring security. It destroys it. Because that kind of living is emotionally brittle, mentally unstable, spiritually suffocating. So how do you begin to shift? First, start small. When something interrupts your plan, notice the loop in your body, the constipated breath, the clenched jaw, the tension in your gut. Pause. Say to yourself, what is mine to control right now, and what isn't? And then release the other half. Example, you are on a deadline at work, then your team cancels a meeting and tells you to just figure it out. Your control instincts kick in, but you cannot go back in time and set the meeting. You cannot control the message reception. You can decide, I will do my best. I will ask for clarification. I will choose peace over perfection. That decision, right there, is your power reclaiming you. Second, say no. Something everyone tells you is good practice because routines are important, but your refusal is becoming your strength. If you do not guard your capacity, your time, mental space, emotional presence, you will be endlessly scheduled by other people's priorities, not yours. Third, ask trust questions. Whenever you feel the pull to control a situation, ask, what would peace do right now? What would trust in the process, trust in myself, do? If you feel your shoulders tense up, pause, walk away, breathe, refocus on what really matters. Fourth, choose to let go. Small action. Delete one recurring worry from your calendar, your notes, or your recurring concerns list. Choose not to talk about it. Choose not to refrigerate its consequences in your head. Take it off your internal scoreboard. Trust that what is meant for you, your energy, your chapter, your phase, will unfold. Not because you controlled it, but because you showed up for the part you can influence, and then released the rest. Let me tell you something. Once you stop trying to make every part of your life perfect, something amazing happens. You begin to operate with fluid precision. You stop waging war on your own emotions. You start collaborating with your evolving reality. You gain internal agility. You become like water encountering rock, standing firm where necessary, yielding where wise, flowing where possible. That is inner strength. It is not loud. It is not showy. It is not complicated, but it is real. And it is sustainable. It is the kind of strength that can carry your entire life, not just your achievements, but your losses, your love, your failure, your unknown future. Not because it wears armor, but because it has learned to breathe with the world, in and out. So if you want to stop being miserable in stealth mode, burning out and blaming failure, then start here. Each morning for the next week, write one sentence. Today, I will steward what is mine and release the rest. Then, when something resists, that sentence is your anchor. Your life is not yours if you are trying to own every corner of it. It is yours when you truly own yourself. Have you ever scrolled through your phone and felt a knot form in your chest? Someone just announced a promotion. Another just got engaged. Someone else just bought a house. And there you are, on your couch, in your room, staring into the glow of someone else's milestone, while quietly questioning your own worth. It does not feel like jealousy, not at first. It feels more like self-doubt, a creeping sensation that maybe you are behind. Maybe you missed something. Maybe everyone else knows something you do not. And that thought, that's how it starts. Comparison is one of the fastest ways to drain your joy without realizing it. It begins subtle, innocent. You are just checking in, just looking around. But before you know it, you are measuring your life by metrics that were never yours to begin with. I ignored this lesson for years. I used to tell myself that comparison was healthy, that it was motivating, that it gave me something to aim for. But that was a lie, a sophisticated one. Because the truth is, you do not compete well when you are pretending to want what someone else has. And that is what comparison does. It shifts your compass. It steals your attention from what matters most and redirects it toward an illusion, an edited version of someone else's story, stripped of context, complexity, and cost. The Stoics warned against this trap. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Sanity means tying it to your own actions. When you compare, you abandon your own actions, your own timing, your own path. You start living not for purpose, but for parity." I remember a season in my life when I was doing well. Deep down, I knew it. I was making progress, quiet, steady, grounded. But then I saw someone else post about their 10x growth or overnight win. And suddenly, my progress felt small, like it did not matter, like I was failing because it was not loud enough to be seen. That is the danger. Comparison does not just distort your self-worth, it erases your sense of reality. You forget what it took to get here. You forget how far you have come. You forget that your chapter 3 should never be measured against someone else's chapter 20. But we do it anyway. We compare bodies, bank accounts, friend circles, milestones, energy levels, relationships, even healing, as if the person who heals faster is somehow more whole. And the worst part, comparison is endless. There is always someone who appears to be doing it better. And if you are not careful, you will spend your entire life chasing shadows instead of building substance. If you want to stay miserable, this is the perfect way. Let other people's timelines dictate your own. Let their applause define your progress. Let their version of success become your new metric for happiness. And then wonder why nothing ever feels enough, even when you arrive. But if you want to take your power back, start here. Reclaim your lane. That means getting honest about what you actually want, not what you have been conditioned to want. What kind of life would still feel meaningful if no one else ever saw it? That question changed everything for me, because I realized I did not want what they had. I just wanted what it represented: peace, meaning, stability, and those things, they were always available to me. But I could not access them while I was busy obsessing over someone else's harvest. So I shifted. I turned off notifications. I limited my scrolling. I revisited my values. And most importantly, I reconnected with my pace, because pace matters. You can build a mansion quickly and end up hollow inside. Or you can build slowly, brick by brick, in alignment with your truth, and sleep soundly at night. So let this be your reminder. Just because someone got there first does not mean they got there right. Just because someone is louder does not mean they are wiser. And just because someone seems ahead does not mean you are behind. Your path is not theirs. Your growth is not theirs. Your timeline is not up for public vote. Here is a simple practice I use. Whenever I feel that sting of comparison rise, I stop and say aloud, I bless their lane, I return to mine. It sounds small, but it is powerful, because it reminds me my lane matters. My growth is sacred. My timing is not late. It is precise. Seneca said, it is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult. And sometimes the greatest dare is to be fully you, unapologetically, imperfectly, intentionally you, in a world obsessed with replication. So if you are still listening, let me ask you, when was the last time you made a decision that was 100% yours, not influenced by a trend, a post, a fear of falling behind? If it has been too long, start again today. Unfollow anyone who makes you forget your worth. Slow down the scroll. Tune back into your own rhythm, because peace lives there, not in being better than anyone, but in being deeper than the noise. There is a particular kind of suffering that does not scream. It does not show itself in dramatic outbursts or loud breakdowns. It lingers quietly, in the background, in the silence between conversations, in the pause before you fall asleep. It waits behind every interaction, every choice. It becomes part of the air you breathe, and you do not even notice it until it suffocates you from the inside out. That suffering is the kind you carry when you refuse to forgive. Forgiveness was one of those lessons I dismissed for a long time, not because I did not believe in it, but because I misunderstood it. I thought forgiving someone meant saying what they did was okay. I thought it meant minimizing the pain or pretending I was no longer hurt. I thought it meant letting someone off the hook when they had not apologized, had not changed, had not even acknowledged what they did. So I held on. I told myself I was protecting myself, But in reality, I was preserving the wound. I kept it fresh, sharp, present, not because I wanted to hurt, but because I did not know how to let go without feeling like I was giving up. But the cost of holding on was not justice, it was joy. The Stoics understood the quiet rot of resentment. Seneca said, "Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it." Epictetus warned that the damage others cause is often temporary, but our reaction to it can make the suffering permanent. And Marcus Aurelius reminded himself again and again, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. But I ignored that. I let the resentment harden me. I let it color the way I saw people. I became guarded, skeptical, quick to assume the worst. I called it wisdom, but it was fear, and it was exhausting. Because unforgiveness is not just emotional weight, it is spiritual erosion. It wears away at your openness, your ability to trust, your willingness to be present. It keeps you reliving a scene that already ended. It makes you the prisoner even when the other person walked away years ago. And the most dangerous part? Sometimes the person you have not forgiven is yourself. That was the hardest one for me. I could eventually find compassion for those who hurt me, but I could not find it for the version of me who let it happen, who stayed too long, who missed the signs, who ignored the red flags, who said yes when everything inside said no. I thought hating that version of me would make me better, more alert, more disciplined, but it did not. It just made me smaller. Because self-hatred does not lead to growth, it leads to guilt, paralysis. It traps you in a loop of who you were, so you never become who you are meant to be. If you want to stay miserable, here is the perfect formula. Never let anything go. Rehearse the betrayal, replay the mistake, refuse to release people from the role they played in your pain. And most of all, hold your own younger self hostage to choices they made when they knew less than you do now. But if you are ready, truly ready to be free, then you need to understand this. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is wisdom. Forgiveness is not about the other person. It is about your peace. It is saying, you no longer have access to my energy, my emotions, my future. I choose to carry lightness instead of carrying you. And when it comes to yourself, forgiveness sounds like, I did the best I could with what I knew then. I would choose differently now. And that is growth, not shame. So here is the practice I invite you to try. Tonight, write 2 letters you will never send. 1 to someone you still feel tension around. 1 to a former version of yourself. Say everything. Be honest. Do not hold back. Then read them out loud to yourself. Not for pity, not for performance, but for release. Then tear them up. Not because the pain did not happen, but because it already happened. It is done. And now it is time to stop letting it write your future. Forgiveness is not erasure. It is closure. You do not need anyone's permission to heal. You do not need to wait for an apology that may never come. You do not need to keep proving how much it hurt. You need to choose peace. Right now. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Ask yourself, what color is your soul carrying from the pain you never let go of? And what would happen if, starting today, you chose to let it be washed clean? Maybe you will cry. Maybe you will laugh. Maybe you will feel nothing. That is okay. Forgiveness is not a feeling. It is a choice, and it is always available. There is a quiet kind of pain that comes from always being the one who says yes. A kind of exhaustion that does not show up in your face or your voice, but in your spirit. You start to feel it when someone asks you for something and your stomach tightens, but you smile anyway. You feel it when you cancel your own plans to be there for someone else, knowing deep down they would not do the same for you. That is the cost of not setting boundaries. And I paid that cost for far too long. I used to think saying yes was a sign of character, that being available, helpful, accommodating, always made me a good person. I thought that if I said no, I would disappoint people. They would be hurt. They would talk. They would leave. So I became an emotional contortionist, twisting myself to fit the needs and expectations of everyone but me. And it worked. For a while, people liked me. They called me reliable, strong, caring, but what they did not see was how tired I was, how resentful I was becoming, how my yes was no longer a gift. It was a reflex born of fear, fear of rejection, fear of being called selfish, fear of being alone. But the real fear, the one I could not admit, was that if I stopped overgiving, I would have nothing left to offer, that I would no longer be needed, and if I was not needed, I would be forgotten. The Stoics warned against this kind of life. Epictetus said, "Never depend on the admiration of others. There is no strength in it." Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about others. It is not given to you to direct their minds." What they were saying beneath the words was this: live from your center, not from others' expectations. I ignored that. I kept giving my time, my energy, my peace to anyone who asked, and slowly I became a shell. I stopped trusting myself. I stopped enjoying my own company. I became addicted to being needed, because being needed felt like being loved. But it is not the same. Being needed is transactional. Being loved is unconditional. And unconditional love, real, deep, soul-aligned love, requires clarity. It requires the courage to say, "This is where I end. This is where you begin. And I will not abandon myself to keep this connection alive." If you are still listening, maybe you feel this too. Maybe you have said yes when every cell in your body wanted to say no. Maybe you have kept answering calls from people who only reach out when they want something. Maybe you keep helping others fix their lives while quietly watching yours fall apart. And maybe, like me, you have confused tolerance with love. But here is what I want you to hear clearly. You are not here to be accessible. You are here to be aligned. Because when you live without boundaries, your life stops being yours. You start living for other people's stories, their narratives, their validation, and what you lose in the process is not just energy, it is identity. So let me be painfully clear. If you want to stay miserable, keep making yourself available to everyone at all times. Keep answering every message the moment it arrives. Keep saying yes to things that drain you. Keep prioritizing being liked over being respected. Keep people-pleasing until you forget what it is you actually need. But if you are ready to change, ready to live, not just exist, then you need to build the muscle that will save your life. The ability to say no without apology. Start small. Say no to the extra project that will burn you out. Say no to the dinner you do not want to attend. Say no to the friend who only calls to complain, never to connect. Say no to your own guilt, the voice that says you have to prove your worth through sacrifice. And in its place, say yes to what restores you. Yes to solitude. Yes to stillness. Yes to the book you have been meaning to read. Yes to the walk that clears your mind. Yes to the version of you that does not perform for love, but radiates it from within. This is what boundaries are. Not walls, but clarity. Not rejection, but respect. Not selfishness, but self-honoring. I remember the first time I set a real boundary. It was clumsy. My voice trembled. My hands were sweaty. I thought I was going to lose someone I cared about. But do you know what happened? I found something I cared about more, myself. And that moment changed everything. It taught me that people who truly love you will not leave because you say no. They will stay because they can trust your yes.
So here is your practice. Write down 3 boundaries you have been afraid to set. Then write down what it is costing you to avoid them. Then ask, what would it feel like to honor myself here? Not to hurt anyone, not to push anyone away, but to return home. To your own energy, your own rhythm, your own truth. Because that is what boundaries do. They bring you back to yourself. And if you are still listening, still here, then, like me, you are ready to stop shrinking for people who never learned to hold space. You are ready to stop trading your presence for approval. You are ready to live unapologetically, with love, with fire, with peace, with a wide open heart and a fiercely protected spirit. There is a kind of loneliness no one talks about. It does not come from being without people. It comes from being disconnected from yourself. You can be in a room full of voices, messages lighting up your phone, invitations waiting, and still feel hollow. Not because you lack company, but because somewhere along the way, you forgot how to be with the one person who has never left you, yourself. I learned that the hard way. For years, I filled every space with noise. Music in the shower, podcasts while walking, texting while waiting in line, Netflix while eating, scrolling until sleep. I was never alone. I made sure of it, because stillness made me nervous. Silence felt like failure. I called it productivity, but deep down I was just avoiding. Avoiding what? My own thoughts, my grief, my unmet desires, my unprocessed memories, the echo of questions I did not want to answer. Because here is the truth. When you do not know how to be with yourself, you will attach to anything or anyone that helps you avoid that meeting. And that is how most of us start relationships. Not from wholeness, from fear, not from love, from loneliness. Not to grow, but to escape. I used to think I just loved being around people, that I was extroverted, that I got energized by connection. But connection is not the same as attachment, and many of the connections I clung to were just distractions. Mirrors I used to make sure I still existed. I ignored this lesson for years. If you cannot be alone, you will never know who you are outside of others' reflection, and that is dangerous, because when your identity depends on feedback, approval, presence, you lose your inner compass. You start becoming whatever your environment rewards. You lose the ability to self-regulate. You reach for someone the second anxiety creeps in. You confuse attention for affection, closeness for safety. But the worst part? You begin choosing wrong, not because you are weak, but because you are afraid of the quiet. You say yes to people who are unavailable, unkind, unaligned, just so you do not have to face an evening alone. You stay in friendships that exhaust you because silence feels worse than small talk. You tolerate chaos because calm feels empty. But silence is not the enemy. It is a portal. Stillness is not a void. It is a mirror. And solitude is not punishment. It is preparation. The Stoics understood this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." He was not talking about isolation. He was talking about intimacy with yourself. Epictetus warned, "You become what you give your attention to." If all your attention goes outward, what is left for you? If you are still here, maybe you know the ache of always being in motion, of never stopping, never pausing, always needing someone to talk to, something to listen to, something to fill the space. And maybe, just maybe, you are tired of living like that. So let me say this clearly. If you cannot sit with yourself in silence, you will always settle for noise disguised as connection. That is not judgment. That is liberation. Because once you learn to be with yourself, everything changes. You stop chasing people who do not see you. You stop filling every weekend with plans you do not enjoy. You stop confusing attention with intimacy. Instead, you begin to choose. You choose people who add, not just distract. You choose rest, not just retreat. You choose truth, not just tolerance. I remember the first time I sat in my room with no sound, no phone, no book, no escape, just a pen and paper. My mind raced, regrets surfaced, memories I had buried came alive, and I wanted to run, but I didn't. I stayed, I wrote, I wept, I breathed, and somewhere in the quiet, I met myself again. It was uncomfortable, but it was real. That was the beginning of wholeness. So if you are still listening, I want to invite you to something that most people will never do, not because they can't, but because they're scared of what they'll find. Spend time alone without distraction. 10 minutes, no phone, no music, no stimulation, just you and a notebook. And the question, what have I been avoiding by staying busy? Then listen. Not to fix, to feel. Write it down. It might feel like nothing at first, but something inside you is watching, waiting, trusting you to come home. Because here is the secret. The most important relationship of your life is not with your partner, not with your parents, not with your followers. It is with yourself. If that relationship is weak, every other connection becomes distorted. But when that relationship is strong, rooted in stillness, nourished by solitude, then every other part of life aligns. You are no longer needy, you are clear. You are no longer desperate, you are grounded. You are no longer lost. You are here, in the quiet, in the center, in your life, fully owned. There is a kind of misery that does not come from failure or loss, but from betraying yourself every day in small, invisible ways, saying yes when you mean no, smiling when you want to cry, laughing at things that do not feel right, shrinking in rooms where your soul wants to stand tall. You do not notice it at first, but slowly, over time, something inside you dims, fades, disappears, and one day you look in the mirror and ask, who even is this? I lived like that for years, quietly shape-shifting, not because I was fake, but because I was afraid. Afraid of not being accepted, afraid of being judged, afraid of being alone. So I learned how to blend in. I studied people, learned their expectations, and then I became what they needed. I was funny in one room, wise in another, agreeable in both. I said the right thing, smiled the right smile, and earned the approval, the likes, the invitations. But at night, when it was quiet, I felt hollow. Because being liked is not the same as being known, and it is definitely not the same as being loved. The Stoics warned against this. Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Marcus Aurelius wrote, it never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own. I ignored that wisdom. I let other people's opinions define what was valuable in me. I measured my self-worth in smiles I received and the silence I maintained. I thought I was keeping the peace, but what I was really keeping was distance from myself, from truth, from depth. When you live to be liked, you become a version of yourself that exists only through performance, and every performance requires rehearsal, energy, masks, and when you wear those masks long enough, you forget what your real face looks like. I remember a conversation I had with someone I loved. They said, I feel like I know you, but I don't really know you. And it broke me, because they were right. I had given them a curated version, polished, predictable, safe, but not me. And if I was honest, I had not let anyone see the real me in a very long time. If you are still listening, maybe you feel that too. Maybe you have been pleasing everyone but yourself. Maybe you say yes out of fear, not freedom. Maybe you post for attention, but then feel emptier after every scroll. Maybe you smile, but feel numb. If so, let me tell you something I wish I had learned earlier. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be real. Being liked is cheap. It is instant. It is fragile. Being real is costly. It is slow. It is powerful. And yes, when you stop performing, some people will pull away, but let them, because they were not in love with you. They were in love with the version of you that made them comfortable. When you stop performing, you make room for people who can actually meet you where you are, and most importantly, you meet yourself. So what does it look like to stop living for approval? It starts with honesty, not brutal honesty, tender honesty, the kind that says, actually, I am not okay today, the kind that says, no, thank you, without a 10-minute explanation, the kind that lets silence exist in conversations where you would normally fill it to avoid discomfort. It looks like choosing outfits because they make you feel alive, not because they fit a trend. It looks like speaking slower, listening deeper, not because you want to appear wise, but because you no longer need to rush. It looks like writing what you really feel, posting what really matters, sitting with what is messy instead of covering it with filters and hashtags and 1,000 "you got this" quotes. It looks like disappointing others so you can stop disappointing yourself. Here is your practice. For the next 48 hours, every time you feel the urge to impress, pause. Ask, am I doing this because it is true or because I want to be seen a certain way? Then choose truth. Just once. Just today. Just enough to remind yourself. You still exist beneath the masks. You are still here. And you are worth knowing. Even if it makes people uncomfortable. Especially then. Marcus Aurelius said, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." I used to read that as a warning, but now I see it as an invitation. Tolerant with people's misunderstandings, strict with your own integrity. Because if the cost of being liked is losing yourself, it is too expensive. Choose depth over decoration. Choose truth over applause. Choose presence over performance. And maybe for the first time, you will feel what it is like to belong to yourself. There is a kind of misery that does not come from failure or loss, but from betraying yourself every day in small, invisible ways. Saying yes when you mean no, smiling when you want to cry, laughing at things that do not feel right, shrinking in rooms where your soul wants to stand tall. You do not notice it at first, but slowly over time, something inside you dims, fades, disappears, and one day you look in the mirror and ask, who even is this? I lived like that for years, quietly shape-shifting, not because I was fake, but because I was afraid of not being accepted, afraid of being judged, afraid of being alone. So I learned how to blend in. I studied people, learned their expectations, and then I became what they needed. I was funny in one room, wise in another, agreeable in both. I said the right thing, smiled the right smile, and earned the approval, the likes, the invitations. But at night, when it was quiet, I felt hollow, because being liked is not the same as being known, and it is definitely not the same as being loved. The Stoics warned against this. Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Marcus Aurelius wrote, it never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own. I ignored that wisdom. I let other people's opinions define what was valuable in me. I measured my self-worth in smiles I received and the silence I maintained. I thought I was keeping the peace, but what I was really keeping was distance from myself, from truth, from depth. When you live to be liked, you become a version of yourself that exists only through performance. And every performance requires rehearsal, energy, masks. And when you wear those masks long enough, you forget what your real face looks like. I remember a conversation I had with someone I loved. They said, I feel like I know you, but I don't really know you. And it broke me, because they were right. I had given them a curated version, polished, predictable, safe, but not me. And if I was honest, I had not let anyone see the real me in a very long time. If you are still listening, maybe you feel that too. Maybe you have been pleasing everyone but yourself. Maybe you say yes out of fear, not freedom. Maybe you post for attention but then feel emptier after every scroll. Maybe you smile but feel numb. If so, let me tell you something I wish I had learned earlier. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be real. Being liked is cheap. It is instant. It is fragile. Being real is costly. It is slow. It is powerful. And yes, when you stop performing, some people will pull away, but let them, because they were not in love with you. They were in love with the version of you that made them comfortable. When you stop performing, you make room for people who can actually meet you where you are. And most importantly, you meet yourself. So what does it look like to stop living for approval? It starts with honesty. Not brutal honesty, tender honesty. The kind that says, actually, I am not okay today. The kind that says, no, thank you, without a 10-minute explanation. The kind that lets silence exist in conversations, where you would normally fill it to avoid discomfort. It looks like choosing outfits because they make you feel alive, not because they fit a trend. It looks like speaking slower, listening deeper, not because you want to appear wise, but because you no longer need to rush. It looks like writing what you really feel, posting what really matters, sitting with what is messy instead of covering it with filters and hashtags and 1,000 "you got this" quotes. It looks like disappointing others so you can stop disappointing yourself. Here is your practice. For the next 48 hours, every time you feel the urge to impress, pause. Ask, am I doing this because it is true, or because I want to be seen a certain way? Then choose truth. Just once. Just today. Just enough to remind yourself. You still exist beneath the masks. You are still here, and you are worth knowing. Even if it makes people uncomfortable, especially then. Marcus Aurelius said, be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. I used to read that as a warning, but now I see it as an invitation. Tolerant with people's misunderstandings, strict with your own integrity, because if the cost of being liked is losing yourself, it is too expensive. Choose depth over decoration. Choose truth over applause. Choose presence over performance. And maybe for the first time, you will feel what it is like to belong to yourself. We love the idea of breakthrough, the big moment, the turning point, that single decision that will change everything. We wait for it, plan for it, dream about it. But here is the truth that most people miss, and that I ignored for years. Your life is not defined by what you do once. It is defined by what you do daily. That sentence should be liberating, but for most of us, it is terrifying, because it means your destiny is not in some distant someday. It is in your next 24 hours, in the choices you repeat without thinking, in the tiny, invisible patterns that build your character, your mind, your future. But for the longest time, I resisted that. I kept chasing the big breakthrough, the seminar, the weekend transformation, the new year, new me rush. I told myself, this time it will be different. But nothing stuck, because I had not changed my habits. And if your habits do not change, your life does not either, no matter how many promises you make. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, you must build up your life action by action, and be content if each one achieves its goal as far as possible. Not fantasy by fantasy, not goal by goal, action by action, because your life is not made of dreams. It is made of repeated motion. I ignored that. I thought discipline was for the rigid, that structure was boring, that routines killed creativity. But here is what I eventually learned the hard way. Freedom is not the absence of structure. Freedom is found inside it, because when you do not control your habits, they control you. When you do not direct your mornings drift. When you do not decide how your time will be used, someone or something else will. And slowly, you stop being the author of your life. You become the audience, watching it unfold, wondering why things are not working out, why motivation keeps vanishing, why your mind feels scattered, why your peace is so fragile. It is not your goals, it is your systems. It is not your potential, it is your pattern. If you are still here listening, maybe you feel that. Maybe you have big dreams, but your days are filled with distractions. Maybe you are a visionary, but your calendar is full of clutter. Maybe you are deeply self-aware, but your daily actions do not reflect that wisdom. And that gap, that is where your misery brews. Not because you are weak, but because you forgot how powerful consistency really is. Here is the thing no one told me. Your habits are not just about results. They are about relationship with yourself. Every time you do what you said you would do, you rebuild trust in yourself. Every time you follow through, you send a message. I am someone who shows up for what matters. And every time you break that promise, even in small ways, you chip away at that trust. You start saying things like, I'm just not a morning person, or I work better under pressure, or I'll start when I feel ready. And all those phrases, they sound reasonable, but they are just stories. Stories you tell to protect yourself from the pain of inconsistency. But you do not need more stories. You need rhythm, repetition, ritual. If you want to transform your life, you do not need to move to a new city. You do not need to quit your job or burn down your old self. You need to master your day, and that mastery starts with the first hour. So here is the practice. Design your morning, not for perfection, for alignment. Ask, what do I need to touch before the world touches me? Maybe it is silence. Maybe it is your journal. Maybe it is stretching. Maybe it is simply water and 5 minutes of breath. Whatever it is, make it sacred, and do it before you open your phone, before you check the noise, before you let the world in, because how you start shapes how you think, and how you think becomes how you choose, and how you choose becomes who you are. Marcus Aurelius said, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I am rising to do the work of a human being." That is not a motivational quote. That is a wake-up call. Because being human, truly human, means choosing growth over comfort, choosing discipline over indulgence, choosing presence over delay. I wish someone had told me earlier, you do not need a miracle. You need a morning. You do not need to overhaul everything. You need to make your next decision reflect the future you say you want. So what does that look like? It looks like going to bed when you said you would, turning off the screen that numbs you, saying no to what drains you, even if it is popular, saying yes to the tiny, boring, consistent steps that no one claps for, but that change everything. Because at the end of your life, it will not be the breakthroughs that define you, it will be your patterns. And every pattern starts with one small habit you choose to keep or ignore. Pain has a way of waiting. It does not leave just because you are not looking at it. It does not fade just because you are busy. In fact, it grows in the dark. It changes shape. It hides inside your choices, your tone of voice, your silence. And one day you realize you are not avoiding the pain anymore. You are living from it. But by then, it has been with you so long, it feels like part of you. That is what happens when you ignore pain. It becomes a lens. And every person you meet, every opportunity you approach, every story you tell yourself, is filtered through that lens. I lived like that for years, carrying things I had not named, avoiding memories I thought I had already buried. I convinced myself I had healed. But what I had really done was distract. And the distractions were so good, so convincing, so constant. I forgot that healing and hiding are not the same thing. The Stoics were no strangers to pain, but they had a different relationship with it. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we are given a short life, but that we waste much of it." And what we waste the most, the parts we refuse to feel. Marcus Aurelius, even while leading armies and facing betrayal, still sat with himself in silence and wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, your pain is not your prison. It is your path. But only if you stop running from it. Because that is what most of us do. We do not face the breakup. We just jump into the next one. We do not grieve the friendship. We just surround ourselves with noise. We do not process the disappointment. We just tell ourselves to move on. And the world encourages this. Stay strong. Keep pushing. Forget the past. But pain that is not felt does not disappear. It transforms into cynicism, into sarcasm, into self-sabotage, into distrust, into patterns you cannot break but do not understand. You think you are just unlucky in love. But maybe you're just afraid to feel the grief you never processed from 5 years ago. You think you are just not that confident. But maybe you're still carrying a wound from a moment when someone humiliated you and you never forgave them or yourself. Pain does not need your permission to stay, but it does need your participation to heal. If you are still here listening, maybe there is something in you that is tired, not physically tired, but soul tired. Because deep down, you have been carrying too much for too long. You tell yourself it is not a big deal, but you still think about it when things go quiet. You tell yourself, I am over it, but you still feel that lump in your throat when their name comes up. You tell yourself, I am fine, but you still flinch when people get too close. Here is the truth. You do not heal by pretending. You heal by feeling, and not just once. Over and over again, until the memory no longer owns you, until the story loses its sting, until your nervous system learns that it is safe now. So how do you begin? You start by creating space, a sacred pause, 10 minutes, no phone, no noise, just you and your body. Ask, what do I still carry that I have not made space to feel? Then breathe. Let the tears come if they do. Let the numbness sit if that is what shows up. Let the memory arrive. Do not rush to fix it. Do not analyze it. Just witness it. Let your body say what your words never could. Then write. Not to publish, not to be poetic, just to clear space inside you. Write the sentence, I am still hurting from and finish it. Then finish it again and again, until there is nothing left to say. Then burn it, not because it erases the pain, but because it honors it, and signals to your body, we are letting go now. I know this sounds simple, but this act, done with intention, can break years of suppression. Because here is the thing no one tells you. Pain only controls you when you ignore it. Once you face it, name it, hold it, it begins to loosen its grip. You are not weak because you are hurting. You are strong because you are finally listening. And when you listen long enough, clarity comes. And with clarity comes choice. You get to decide, will I let this pain define me or refine me? Will I carry it into every future chapter, or will I lay it down piece by piece until I walk lighter? That is what healing is. Not erasure, not perfection, permission to feel, to weep, to be angry, to let it out, so you can let it go. You want to stop being miserable? Then stop pretending you are not still in pain. Start tending to what aches. Start creating space for what still stings. Start building a relationship with your inner wound, not to worship it, but to walk with it, until it no longer leads. This is not weakness. This is freedom. There is a strange kind of emptiness that shows up even when everything looks fine. You are doing the things. You are meeting deadlines. You are making money. You are showing up. And yet, something feels missing. You wake up with a sense of pressure but no direction. You go to bed tired but not fulfilled. That, right there, is the weight of a life without purpose. Not the dramatic existential kind of purposelessness, the subtle kind, the kind that numbs you slowly, that makes the days blend together, that turns your calendar into a cycle instead of a calling. I lived like that for years. I told myself I was just busy, that I was grinding, that I was building something, but I never stopped to ask, building what? For whom? Why? Because asking that question terrified me. What if I did not know the answer? What if the life I was building was not really mine? What if I had been on autopilot for so long I forgot how to drive? That is the risk when you do not live with purpose. You become efficient at tasks that do not matter. You become good at things that are not good for you. You start optimizing your life, while slowly drifting away from your soul. The Stoics had no patience for this kind of unconscious living. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Stop whatever you are doing for a moment and ask yourself, am I afraid of death because I will not be able to do this anymore?" He was not being morbid, he was being honest. He was reminding himself and us that our time is not infinite, that our energy is not free, that every moment spent in distraction is a moment stolen from meaning. But I ignored that. I let life happen to me instead of through me. I followed paths that looked successful. I said yes to roles that looked impressive. I chased numbers, not values. And when I hit milestones, I felt nothing. Because when you do not know why you are doing something, even success feels empty. If you are still here listening, maybe you feel that too. Maybe your days are full, but your heart is tired. Maybe you are productive, but disconnected. Maybe you are climbing a ladder that is leaning against the wrong wall. Let me tell you the hard truth. Directionless living does not feel dangerous until it is. Until you look back at 5 years of effort and realize you were going in circles. Until you realize you have been busy but not becoming. That is the cost of ignoring purpose. So let us talk about what purpose really is. Not the fancy version, not the change the world pressure we put on ourselves. Purpose is simple. It is clarity about what matters. It is knowing your why, even if it is quiet. It is letting your values, not your fears, dictate your direction. Purpose does not always look exciting. Sometimes it looks like saying no to what is popular. Sometimes it looks like leaving the room, the job, the relationship, because it does not align. Sometimes it looks like doing the same thing every day, not because it is easy, but because it is yours. So how do you find it? You do not. You choose it. You do not wait for lightning. You do not wait for a sign. You stop. You listen. You ask the question, if I had only 5 years left to live, not in fear but in focus, what would I want my days to be filled with? And you write the answers, not the perfect ones, not the polished ones, the real ones. Then you circle what shows up more than once. That is your compass, not the whole map, but the direction. From there, you begin. You start building a life that means something, not to everyone, but to you. You let your no be loud when it protects what matters. You let your yes be slow because you are not here to be pulled. You are here to build. If you want to stay miserable, here is how. Keep waking up and living by accident. Keep chasing what others celebrate. Keep ignoring the whisper in your chest that says, this isn't it. But if you want to change, then listen, not to the noise, to your own soul. It knows what is yours. It always has. Purpose is not a destination. It is a discipline. And you find it not once, But every time you choose alignment over approval, depth over distraction, direction over delay, you are not behind, you are not lost. You are just one decision away from moving with intention. There comes a point in your life when silence speaks louder than words, when the noise fades, the applause fades, the distractions lose their thrill, and all you are left with is you, your choices, your patterns, your regrets, your breath. And in that stillness, one question rises above the rest. Have I really lived, or have I just reacted? Because that is what this entire journey has been about. Not dramatic transformation, not chasing perfection, but waking up to the reality that the life you are building is being shaped by what you pay attention to and what you ignore. And when you ignore the wrong things for too long, you pay for it in misery, quiet misery, the kind that shows up in overthinking, in emptiness, in anger that does not make sense, in fatigue that sleep cannot fix, in relationships that repeat the same pattern, in mornings that feel heavy for no reason. You become miserable not all at once, but inch by inch, every time you refuse to learn the lesson life keeps handing you. You ignored responsibility and wondered why you felt powerless. You ignored boundaries and wondered why you felt drained. You ignored solitude and wondered why you kept choosing the wrong people. You ignored your purpose and wondered why your success felt so hollow. You ignored your pain and wondered why your joy could never last. I know this because I lived it. I tried to distract myself into happiness, to succeed my way into peace, to perform my way into love. But life kept circling me back to the same truths, softly at first, then louder, until I had no choice but to listen. And that is what brought me here, because I finally understood. Life does not punish, it teaches. But if you refuse to be the student, you will become the lesson. The Stoics knew this. They trained for life, not by escaping its difficulty, but by facing it head-on. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality, but I think we suffer even more in avoidance, because what we avoid grows, what we suppress festers, what we ignore owns us." So let me ask you now, after everything, which of these lessons are you still pretending not to know? That people-pleasing is not love. That distraction is not healing. That busyness is not purpose. That silence is not weakness. That guilt is not guidance. That your future is not something to wait for. It is something to live into. Maybe you know the answer already. Maybe you have known it all along. And if you are still here listening, then you, like me, are done living passively. You are done drifting. You are done pretending tomorrow will magically be different while repeating the same cycle today. So here is what I want you to do. Not next week, not after the next book. Now, take one lesson from this journey, the one that stung the most, and act on it today. If it is responsibility, stop blaming. If it is boundaries, say no. If it is pain, sit still. If it is purpose, make one small change in your routine that reflects your real values. If it is solitude, put down the phone and spend time with your thoughts. If it is forgiveness, write the letter and release the weight. If it is comparison, unfollow the account and return to your lane. If it is discipline, build the habit, even if it is only 5 minutes. If it is approval, say what is true, even if your voice shakes, because no amount of listening changes your life. Only living does. This was never about becoming someone else. It was always about returning to who you were, before the world told you to forget, before the pressure, before the pretending, before the pain taught you to armor up instead of open up. You already know what needs to change. The question is, will you keep ignoring it? Or will this be the moment everything shifts? Not because the world changes, but because you do. This is not motivation. This is remembrance. You were not born to perform. You were born to be, to feel, to choose, to change, to create, to live on purpose. So take a breath and begin again. This time with your eyes open, with your heart anchored, with your steps aligned, with your peace protected, because the fastest way to a miserable life is to keep ignoring what your soul already knows. But the fastest way to freedom is to finally honor it.
If this message stirred something in you, don't let it fade. Write one thing down that you'll start doing this week. 2025 doesn't magically change anything you do, and your future begins the moment you decide to move, even just a little.